Hey guys, how are y'all doing today? In this video, I want to really quickly discuss what, in my opinion, are the 5 biggest things that NFL teams and organizations do wrong. And, I've had a lot of time to think about this just from years and years of watching football. Sometimes I'll see things on TV and just hear things in the media, and I'll be like, what were they thinking? Why would they do that? And I'm not really in a position to talk because I'm not in the NFL, not yet anyways. I would like to be someday. It's what we're working towards, but those kind of things take time. So for now, I'm left to harshly critique from the outside. But without further ado, let's get into what I think are the 5 biggest mistakes that NFL organizations make, organizations and teams, let's say. And so we're going to start off with number 5 being going for it on 4th down excessively. You would not believe how many times you see teams in like a 4th and 1 and a 4th and 2 situation when they're easily in field goal range and they could get their 3 points just like that, but instead they want to go for it to keep the drive moving, and then they don't convert. Even the last game that happened in real life was the Lions against the Vikings this past Sunday. Today is Friday, so that was 5 days ago. The Vikings in the first half, twice in the first half, they got down to about the 3-yard line, and they got to 4th and goal, and they went for it both times trying to punch it in for a touchdown, and they converted neither of them. 2 incomplete passes. And so that's 6 points. If they just taken the 2 easy field goals they could have had, that would have been 6 points. They were down, what was the score? It was 10-6 at halftime. They were losing. If they had those 2 field goals, they would have been up 12-10 at halftime, and they got the ball to start the second half, so it could have been a huge momentum swing in the game. But with the Lions having a 4-point lead, the Lions just kind of increased the lead. The Vikings got more and more desperate. They wouldn't have had to have been so desperate if they had the lead to begin with by just taking their field goals. And so I just feel like teams get greedy, they get overzealous, want to go for the 7 points, go for the touchdown, but they don't take the easy points that are right there in front of them. And in the NFL, these points matter at the end of the game. 3 points here, 3 points there will add up. You feel like you're losing 4 points you could have with a touchdown, but you're gaining 3 points that can help you later on in the game. I've just seen thousands and thousands of instances of teams going for it on 4th, coming up empty and shooting themselves in the foot in the long run. You got to take your points. Unless you're Philadelphia and you know you can do the tush push for like a 90% chance of success on a 4th and 1 or something like that, unless you have the perfect play dialed up, or unless you're in desperate need of a touchdown, take your points. My goodness. The number 4 mistake that I think teams make way too often is I don't think they pay enough attention to players' attitudes. The really good teams, the Chiefs, the Patriots a few years ago, the dynasties, they do a really good job of that because they realize that attitude is just as important as what a player can provide on the field with their performance. And so the Patriots let Antonio Brown go when he was starting to develop his CTE. Kadarius Toney was let go by the Chiefs when he started acting like a prima donna. And so they do a really good job of making sure that they have the right attitudes and work ethic along with talent. But a lot of the teams that don't do as good, it's probably a big reason why, is they just take the best player out there talent-wise and don't focus enough on the attitudes and the sportsmanship. That matters just as much as on-field performance. I can think of, Albert Hainsworth, Vontaze Burfict, dirty players, and then Jamarcus Russell, someone who was lazy. Jamarcus Russell was drafted 1st overall by the Raiders back in 2007. I remember after they drafted him, they suspected that he wasn't watching film, doing the necessary things that QB should be doing. And so they gave him a blank, those little VCR, those little VHS tapes, whatever you call them. You put them into your VCR. I forget the names of it exactly because it was so long ago. But they gave him a blank tape, and they told him it had QB, like IQ stuff, like new stuff to study and whatnot. And so they took it with them, and they gave it to him, and Jamarcus Russell took it home and came back the next day, and they asked him what was on the tape, like, what did you watch? And Jamarcus Russell said he watched things about pass protections on it, but they knew he was lying because they gave him a blank tape. And so just things like that, those are the kind of things you got to figure out before you select the player and you're stuck with him and all of the money you got to pay him, not after. And so teams need to focus way more on that, because a bad attitude player will bring down your locker room. They're like just a cancer that can weigh your team down, and you need people that'll lift your team up, The number 3 thing I think that teams don't do enough is I don't think they trade their assets when the bridge has been burned, when there's the point of no return, when that's come. So I think about Saquon and Derrick Henry. They both left their teams from last year to go to a new, better team this year. And, that's respectable. They've had long careers with their teams, and so they deserve a change of scenery if they want it. But if I was the Titans who knew Derrick Henry wanted out, if I was the Giants who knew Saquon wanted out, I would have traded him as eagerly as I possibly could have, because if you just wait till free agency, till the offseason, they're going to leave anyways. So you might as well trade them a little bit early, and you might be out a little bit of money because you have to pay them the cap hit, and you might not get as much as you might think they're worth, but it's better than doing nothing if they're going to leave anyways. You might as well trade them for something, get some 4th round picks, get a decent young player, maybe you can develop him, get something. There's so many players that end up leaving their teams. The teams just let them go in free agency when they'd be better off just trading them. Yeah, you might get one less season of them. You might be trading them prematurely, so to speak. But if you know that they're going to go, then get something out of them in return. Get something to kind of, at least some draft picks, something to help build your team up going forward. The number 2 thing that I think NFL teams do really, really badly, the second worst in my opinion, is they tolerate bad front offices. Now, this one right here is a little bit tricky. It's different than all the others because I don't even know how you would really go about fixing this, because you can't really just kick out an owner or a general manager. They own the team. They're in charge. So how do you kick out the boss or the king or whatever? You know what I mean? All the other solutions or all the other problems have easy solutions that you can just implement like that. But this one right here is a little bit trickier. I don't know how someone would go about solving it, but needless to say, it still is a really big problem. 3 teams I think of that are really, really bad as far as their front offices is Washington, all these past several years, the Chicago Bears, and the New York Giants. You can look up the general managers and the owners of those 3 teams if you want to know more about it. But those teams have just squandered top draft pick after top draft pick. They're always getting the top draft picks because their record's so bad, and they're always drafting poor prospects with it. Bad coaching hire after bad coaching hire after bad coaching hire. And so when you keep doing that repeatedly over and over and over, you can put your team in a divot, in a big old hole for years, dare I even say decades. You can just put your team way in a deficit, and it's really hard to dig yourself out of that hole. Because think about it, if you're paying a coach or if you're paying a player so much money and they're not really worth it, and you end up letting them go to try to get a new coach or a new player, you still have to pay a good portion of that money to the person from before, because you owe them that guaranteed money, they call it. And then that's less money you have to try to get a better coach or a better player for next time. And so just bad decision making in the front office. I almost feel like they don't have the team's best interest at heart. They have like personal greed and other financial interests at heart. And so teams need to find a way to get better ownership, get better GMs that have truly the team's best interest at heart to help them be competitive and start winning. I'm blessed to be a Chiefs fan because, Brett Veach, our GM, Andy Reid, and then the Hunt family, our owners, they're always making moves. They're always trying to get players to restructure contracts to save money for the team. They're the ones who brought in Andy Reid and brought in Patrick Mahomes in the first place, drafted Kelsey, drafted Tyreek Hill, drafted Chris Jones. All these guys are drafted, making the right choices, getting the right coach, picking the right players. And then the Patriots with Belichick as the coach and GM, Robert Kraft, the owner, they were always making the right moves to help the team be successful and keep winning. Baltimore, respectable ownership as well. And so there's a lot of teams out there that do it the right way, and more teams need to aspire to be like that. Oh boy, this right here is big. The number 1, by far, not even close, just inexplicable, debilitating, heart-crushing mistake that I think NFL teams make. I could go on about this for hours. I'm going to do my best not to drag this out and waste the rest of you guys' day. But man, do I have some strong opinions about this. The number one mistake that I think NFL teams make without a shadow of a doubt is overpaying quarterbacks. For some reason, football teams are under the impression that the quarterback is the holy grail, that if you get a good one of those, then you're automatically going to win the Super Bowl every year. And that is a myth. I do not know where in the heck that started. I don't know who came up with it. I don't know who brainwashed so many owners and so many coaches to get on board with that philosophy, but a quarterback will not win you games on their own. It has been proven time and time and time again. Don't get me wrong, a quarterback is very important. I could see how there's a case to be made for a quarterback to be the most important position because they have the most responsibility on the team, and mental and physical, distributing the ball to the right players, making the right decisions on the field. But to say that they're more important than all the other positions combined and that they alone can win you games, blasphemy, outrageous. Take a look at this right here. These are the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL currently. And I want you to look at the names at the top. Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, Tua. No knock on those guys. They're respectable football players. But I want you to go down the list and see how long it takes until you find a quarterback that's won a Super Bowl. I'll wait. Okay, down there. Patrick Mahomes, the 13th highest paid quarterback. That's the first one on the list that's actually won a Super Bowl before. So the top 12 highest paid quarterbacks have never won a Super Bowl. Do y'all see the problem with that? And you know what's there's a few cases in there, like with Joe Burrow especially, where even if he is deserving of the money, because Joe Burrow is top tier, I would dare say that Joe Burrow, Lamar, Mahomes, and Josh Allen are the only four up there that are deserving of the money they're being paid. Nobody else is, not at all. But even Joe Burrow, as good as he is, if you want to say he's deserving of that money, look at his team success. They just missed the playoffs this year. I think for the second year in a row, if I'm not mistaken, they've missed the playoffs. And you know why? Because as good as Joe Burrow's playing, when you're paying him so much money, you don't have money to get him a good offensive line to protect him. You don't have money to get a good defense around him to help him win. You don't have money to do the other things you need to do. He can't do it on his own. And so I don't know all the specifics of their situation. I don't know if Joe Burrow just cares more about getting money than winning football games. I know a lot of players are like that. But if you want to win and you want to be great, you do not need to be getting paid that much money, because you're taking up a huge percentage of your team's salary. And that's money that if you would just take less of, they could use to bring in other players, sign some good defensive players, sign some good receivers for you, get a good offensive line. Teams do not value offensive line nearly enough. If you want to look at the top teams every year that are in the conference championship games, that are winning Super Bowls, some of them have good quarterbacks. Most of them have a really good defense. But the one thing they all have, no ifs, ands, or buts, is a good offensive line. Because if your offensive line is not good, you cannot run the ball. Your great quarterback cannot pass. Your great QB will probably get hurt, won't be healthy. Your great receivers don't have time to eat down the field. And so the offensive linemen, they do the dirty work, but they really are the engine that makes the train move, in all seriousness. And I don't know how teams have not picked up on that yet. As great as Patrick Mahomes is, he can't take all the credit. His offensive line and his defense are a big reason why he has the 3 Super Bowl rings. And Tom Brady, as great as he was, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, you know what the best thing about him was? Is that he always took pay cuts. He always took less money to make sure that he could have a good defense around him, a good offensive line, and some good weapons to get the ball to. He knew that it wasn't all about him. Not in the slightest. Tom Brady was consistently, take a look here, amongst the 8th, 10th, 12th, 15th highest paid quarterback. Even if he thought he was the best, he didn't need to be paid like the best, because nobody remembers who had the highest salary. Who was the highest paid quarterback 10 years ago? I don't know. Probably neither do you. Who was the highest paid in 1975? I have no idea, and you probably don't either. Nobody remembers that. But who remembers? Do you remember who has all the rings? Brady, Montana, Terry Bradshaw, Patrick Mahomes. Those are the guys that won the championships. Everybody knows that. So that's really what matters at the end of the day, is your supporting system, not the money. And then some people will even say that, oh, but they need that money because, living is expensive. Or Tom Brady had Giselle as his wife, so he doesn't need all that money. He doesn't need the money because he has Giselle. What? You did not just say that. You did not just say that Tom Brady doesn't need the money because he has Giselle. You're telling me that, sorry, Dak, sorry, Jordan Love, you're telling me that those guys are living in poverty and they need the $60 million a year to stay afloat and be able to afford their groceries and whatnot? That is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. Somebody trying to say that Tom Brady took the pay cuts because he had Giselle. He doesn't need the money. That other people need the money or they're going to be in poverty. Do you know how many police officers and firefighters are working out there for hundreds of times less, doing hundreds of times more for our country, for our world, putting their lives on the line? That's a slap in their face to insinuate that. That's crazy. Not to mention Russell Wilson has Ciara, and then Aaron Rodgers was dating Danica Patrick for a time, and they still had no problem taking the contracts. You know what it is though? It's pride. And so somebody like Dak might look and see that, according to the stats, I think I'm like the 5th best quarterback in the league. So I need to be paid the 5th most or more. That's a slap in my face. They're disrespecting me. That's a wound on my pride. And so a lot of these quarterbacks, they'll look at the stats, they'll look at the film, they'll have a few good years, and they'll see that, you know what, I'm the 3rd best in the league, or I'm like top 10 in the league, so I better be getting paid top 10, or that's a slap in my face. They're doing my ego wrong. They have these big egos about them. That's why they demand so much money. And in the long run, they end up hurting their own cause, hurting their own team. They may not care. They might like the money. But, man, I could go on and on for hours about this. But, the greats like Brady and Mahomes knows he's the best in the world. There's no question about it. But he has no problem being the 13th highest paid quarterback because he knows that, who cares? I want to win. I want my Super Bowls. I want my team to succeed and have fun out there. And if I'm getting hit and beat up because I have no protection around me, I'm not going to be having fun. Tom Brady doesn't care. He's the 12th highest paid. He knows he's the best, but he don't got to be paid like the best. That doesn't matter. Who cares? There's so much more important things in life than money. And so they get it. Very few people like that get it. And so, when you pay so much money to somebody unproven, like Deshaun Watson and other quarterbacks, and if they end up getting hurt and being not able to play, then you've just wasted all that money. That money is just gone down the toilet, down the drain like that. And it takes years and years to be able to recover that money back because you still got to pay the guy the guaranteed money at least. And so you just put your team in a huge deficit. Man, oh my gosh, it drives me bananas that teams think that they need to pay quarterbacks this much money. Quarterbacks aren't exactly a dime a dozen, I wouldn't say. But if you're not one of the top tier quarterbacks, you can really win with any quarterback. Think about the QBs that are in the Super Bowl consistently. You think about Jared Goff and the Lions that are right there. Like, Goff is good, but Goff isn't one of the elite or anything. Brock Purdy's very good, but he was undrafted, so nobody thought he was elite or anything, and he's been to the conference championship twice and the Super Bowl once. Who else has been? Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. Derek Carr had a really good year that one time with the Raiders. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Whoever the Bucs quarterback was in 2002, Jeff Garcia or somebody. Joe Flacco's won a ring. Eli's won 2 rings. Who else? I'm trying to think. Recent Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. And so some of them are some of the Hall of Famers, but more often than not, Doug Williams won a Super Bowl. Joe Namath won a Super Bowl. A lot of mid to lower tier quarterbacks have won Super Bowls. I would say more mid to low tier quarterbacks have won Super Bowls than elite quarterbacks because Peyton only has 2. We're not counting Brady, Mahomes, and Montana, but like Elway went to 3 and lost all 3 of them before he finally won 2 at the end. Marino never won a Super Bowl. Brett Favre, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers each only won 1 time. In 20-year careers, they only won 1 Super Bowl. And as you saw right there, the 12 highest paid current QBs haven't won a Super Bowl. So QBs will not do it all for you. I don't know why teams think that or where they came up with that preposterous assumption. And if you go back 10 years ago, the top 10 highest paid QBs from 10 years ago, most of them probably don't have rings either. I'm sure of it. I rambled for 10 minutes about the quarterback thing. I should probably be done now. I appreciate y'all watching. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope you all have an incredibly blessed rest of y'all's day. I will catch y'all in the next video.